So Beetlejuice Beetlejuice is the apparently long-awaited sequel to Tim Burton's Beetlejuice, which once again finds Michael Keaton becoming the buck wild exorcist of Beetlejuice. Now, interestingly enough, I think it was kind of a good choice to bring Tim Burton back to direct the sequel. Not just because Burton directed the original one, but I think that Burton realizes what made the first Beetlejuice, I think, so appealing, and I think the most memorable thing, and I think the thing I loved the most about the original Beetlejuice was just the staging of it all. Like I love the sets, I love the effects. Like the most like memorable things for me are like, when like the ghosts like stretch out their bodies and like, they open up their mouths and there's eyeballs on their tongue and all these weird creature designs here and there. That's like, for me, like kind of like the heart and soul of what made Beetlejuice so much fun, and I think why a lot of people love it as well. And that's kind of the good thing about Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, is that it leans into a lot of that, and I think that's for the best, because this is a film that there's a lot going on, and it does become a bit messy and uneven. But I think the more that it leans into like the wild nature of all like the effects and the puppets and the macabre and the dark humor, I think that's where it works. And it gets to a certain point by like the third act where it just like, everything is kind of culminating, but at the same time, it's just like, it's still like a bit of a mess. Like there's an unevenness, but just the way that everything is presented, I think that really works well for this film. Because script-wise, there's a lot going on in this film. Too much, even. So you have Winona Ryder, once again, reprising her role as Lydia Dietz. She's much older now, but now she uses her ability to see ghosts for her own benefit to kind of like, rise up in fame. Except she's still haunted by Beetlejuice, and she still hasn't come to terms with her past in a number of ways. Not just with Beetlejuice haunting her, but also with like having lost her husband, and just recently she's lost her father, and also she's having problems connecting with her mom, and and her mom is once again back played by Catherine O'Hara, and Lydia also has to deal now with her own daughter, played by Jenna Ortega, who's called Astrid, and they feel a little bit distant because Astrid doesn't believe in the paranormal, so there's a whole family crisis going on here. But she's hoping that that she'll be able to resolve these issues, when she's able to come home to the original spot, where she first saw the ghosts for the funeral of her dad. And that's not even covered. There's also like Lydia's current boyfriend, who is like a manipulative person who's trying to like look out for her, but really he's just like a greedy guy who wants all her money, and they kind of set that up as him being like the obvious villain here. And that's before we even get into all like what Beetlejuice is doing here, because even outside of that, like Beetlejuice has his own thing going on in the underworld. Apparently, Beetlejuice's ex-wife, played by Monica Bellucci, called Dolores, has like somehow broken out of her containment and is now sucking out souls. So now Beetlejuice is kind of on the run and needs to kind of like seek safety, but at the same time he's still going after Lydia, and it's just like, there's so much going on in this. There's a whole Astrid has like a romance with a teenager that happens about halfway through this film, and she connects with there's, like I said, there's too much going on in this film. And that kind of hurts the film, because like with so much going on, there's not much time to develop these characters. Like Dolores, you think would be like an interesting villain, but she's more interesting in her staging. Like she doesn't really have any memorable lines, and her motives aren't that unique or interesting. Even Lydia's manipulative boyfriend isn't like, he's kind of like more like leans on the cartoonish villain side, to the point where he's like very overt in his intentions by the end. Like he's just outright stating what he's gonna do with Lydia. And even like Astrid's relationship is like, it feels like everything is like speed running here, like as quickly as it can, to get the plot, like all these plot lines smushed together as quickly as they can, mostly because the funeral takes place about 2 days before Halloween, and leading up to Halloween, there's way too much going on. Like there's a wedding that's going to happen. There's, there's, like I said, too much going on. But like I said, the staging is what makes this film work. Because like I said, like with Dolores, like, yeah, she's a good villain to look at. But they don't really give her much of a motivation or much of any lines. But as the film kept going on, like, I started watching it, and like I was admiring like the practical effects and the weird creepy creatures. Like I especially loved how Beetlejuice has his own office where he's employed all the those like shrunken head characters from the previous film. I love how they kind of like cavort about the office in this kind of like dryly comedic way. It's fun to get lost in like those detours, because this film does take a lot of detours, and I think by the time it gets mostly to the underworld, and it has like all like like the typical like bureaucracy that goes on there. I mean, you have some fun cameos with Danny DeVito as a janitor who's like chugging Drano. All those little elements I thought were fun, and I like that Burton allows us to just kind of get lost in it all by the third act. And I don't think it's even just like the staging. I also think it's like the energy that you have to bring to this type of material to make it fun. Like at one point, they established that there's a train that takes people like to the hereafter, like where the ghosts meet their ultimate fate, and it's called the Soul Train. And they do lean into like the Soul Train parody, where like once they get down there, it's all like disco music and 70s dancers, so that they play up the whole Soul Train angle, which could be a tired bit. If it weren't for the fact that there's a lot of energy in that scene. It's dazzling to look at. The music's great. There's just the dancing. All of it, I think, goes a long way to get you into the right mood where you're more along for the ride, rather than questioning too much of the dynamics here. Michael Keaton back as Beetlejuice, I think he still kind of has a little bit of that charm that the original Beetlejuice had. There are rarely moments where like it slows down too much. Like even in like the backstory that Beetlejuice divulges about Dolores, he does it with style. Like there's a very clear Mario Brava what do you an homage to him, including they also have like a Mario Bava by name at one point. They reference him, but I love that Beetlejuice gets to play around with that, where even when he does have to slow down and bring out some exposition, he's still able to do it in kind of like a fun and gruesome manner. And he hasn't lost his touch. In fact, the first time that Beetlejuice and Lydia meet like face to face, it starts off the way that you would expect their meeting to go. Like his Beetlejuice makes his guts explode out, and there's like a baby Beetlejuice that's flying around, and the baby Beetlejuice is nibbling on people's feet. It's all like that, leaning into like the weird, that I think makes it work. And the more that the film goes on, I think that it works. It kind of works its magic over on me. And I'm glad it did, because otherwise, if it was just relying on the story here and didn't have as much of that Tim Burton style and that tone, I don't think I'd be as engaged with it. In fact, I think I might be a little mad that I kind of like wasted a few actors here. I haven't even covered like Willem Dafoe playing this great character called Wolf Jackson, who in reality he was an actor, but after he died, he became a detective, even though he's just an actor detective. So he kind of plays up his roles, and he has like cue cards, and he's constantly getting coffee from his assistant. And it's a very charming character. The same goes for like, there's another great role by, what's his name? There's a priest in here, who is constant. I think it's like it's a reverend, played by Burn Gorman, who is constantly talking in like scripture, like so quickly to kind of like rationalize everything in life by just like quoting scripture, and it just confuses everyone around him. And it's great. Like these are fun characters, and I guess like at first I was a little bit pissed that I didn't see as much of these characters, but at the same time I'm like, you know what? Every time these characters are on screen, I'm having fun with them, and like I don't think like their jokes are overplayed. I feel like they're here just long enough, where they're fun, and even like Danny DeVito is only in the film like very briefly. I feel like the film, it's even though it's like it's going really quickly and it's veering off into so many detours and tracks, I think it finds the fun spots to go to with this material. The film does kind of lean, I think, a little bit more on the like the karaoke that Beetlejuice did in the original film. Like they don't just like rehash all the same songs. There is one like alternative version of a familiar song that they use, but I did kind of like how they use like a MacArthur Park for like the big finale there, and it's still that there's still something to be said of like the charm that Beetlejuice can weave when he's forcing people to do dance numbers and kind of like sing and have these odd expressions on their face where they can't believe that their bodies and their voices are doing this, which is like it's equal parts creepy and it's fun, and I think that's where like the heart of Beetlejuice lies, that I think makes this film mostly work. Like script wise, it's a mess. It's uneven. It doesn't spend enough time developing its characters. But style wise, and I imagine that a lot of people are coming here just so that they can see visuals and like tones of what the original Beetlejuice film was. And especially if you are like going in to see like a little bit more of the underworld, you will get that here. It is still fun to explore more of Tim Burton's wild world of the dead. And it's colorful, it's amusing, it's still got a little bit of that dark charm. It doesn't punch as much as the first film, but it still has its moments here and there. And, you know, for just being a ride that veers all over the place, I kind of enjoyed it. Not as much as the first film, but for what it's trying to do here, I think it uses this material just enough where I think it's like a fairly satisfying sequel. It's a fun, it's not a great, but it is a fun ride for, you know, returning to this to Beetlejuice, you know.